Oh, you can't. Good evening. Let's stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I want to thank you all, citizens of Ozark, for coming out tonight for what is our fourth candidate interview for the position of Superintendent of Schools for the Ozark City School System. Tonight, we are interviewing Dr. David West, who comes from Madison, Alabama, and we will be hearing from him later. Joining me on the stage are members of our school board, Mr. Larry Hicks, Mr. Herman Jackson, Mr. Nicholas Bull, two-term member, Leslie Reeder. We have a moderator for the evening, Ms. Amy Pierce, who is from our central office. Amy will be directing questions to Dr. West. These questions have been prepared by the school board and sanctioned by our school board attorney, Mr. Henry Steedall. There will not be any questions from the audience. Ms. Pierce.
Welcome, Mr. West. We ask that everyone to please silence your phones at this time.
Good evening, school board. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank AASB for their search. Being named a finalist for the position of Superintendent of Ozark is a humbling experience for me. A little bit about me. I'm not one about titles, but I've been called in my lifetime, my career, Prophet West, Investigator West, Sergeant West, Dr. West, Principal West, but my favorite title is probably Dad. I'm a proud father of Reagan West. Reagan is my soon-to-be 14-year-old daughter, and she'll be a freshman in the fall. I do life with Reagan and our 80-pound golden doodle, True, and we live a great life. But I digress. I'm originally from the greater Birmingham area. I was raised and went to Homewood High School. I graduated from Homewood High School in 1996, and I was an all-state soccer player while at Homewood. After high school, I enlisted in the Army and spent 5 years traveling the world as a military police. In 1999, Uncle Sam sent me to Dale County of all places. And I was stationed on Fort Rucker from 1999 until 2001. In 2001, I decided I wanted to get out of the military and pursue a career in education. In 2004, I was hired by the Dothan City Board of Education and taught both 4th and 5th grades in Dothan City schools. From there, I went on to be an assistant principal in Crenshaw County and here in the great city of Ozark at Elizabeth Elementary School. From there, I became a principal at Southdale Middle School. I was there from 2010 until 2014. In 2014, I was called to Enterprise and was the principal at Comptonville Junior High School. Currently, I serve as the Safety, Security, and Emergency Management Coordinator with Madison City Schools. Like I said before, it's an honor to be here. My formal education includes a bachelor's and master's degree in elementary education. I have a master's level endorsement in EDS and educational leadership, all from Troy. And I have a doctorate in education from Liberty University. My leadership style, I would consider myself a servant leader. I have a servant's heart. It's not about me. It's not about David West. It's about the organization. I've shown that from being a team leader and squad leader in the Army. I've shown that as a school teacher. I've shown that as an assistant principal. I've shown that as a principal, and I show that as a district level employee. I've also served as a consultant, and I've consulted on math instruction, classroom management, and standardized test preparation. That's a little bit about me, and I look forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Mr. West. At this time, we will begin the board-prepared questions for the candidates. The superintendent has to make multiple decisions in a variety of areas every day. Please describe your management and decision-making style and give a few examples of strategies you have found most effective.
I think being a superintendent is a 24/7 job. I've heard it described, being a principal described as drinking from a fire hose. And I've heard it described being a superintendent as drinking from like a fire hydrant. It is nonstop. I'm fortunate to be in a district where our current superintendent, Dr. Ed Nichols, does emerging next training. Emerging next is a profile system that's based on science, very similar to the Myers-Briggs or the Colors test. In your handout, I gave you guys a copy of my profile. My profile is very much analytical. So I'm a very analytical person. I like looking at data and research in order to inform my decisions. I also have a social component to that as well. Social not being a social butterfly, I like to know what's going on around me. I like to work with others. So I consider that my decision-making style. Also, I like to listen. I think great leaders listen. I think God blessed us with 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen more than we talk. I found that to be very. So talking to teachers, talking to other administrators, I think it's very important not to always make decisions in passing. Have that person send you an email. I think that's very important. Because sometimes we make bad decisions when we don't think things through. I also think that we need to be reflective in our actions. I'm a very reflective person. At the end of the day, I look back on all the decisions that I made, and some are good, some are bad, but we have to trudge forward. I don't like to engage in social media. I think social media can be a downfall for many people and many school districts. I think my military background lends me to having a chain of command. If a parent has a concern, an issue, they should address that at the lowest level possible. Prefer to the teacher. If that doesn't work, there's an assistant principal, there's a counselor, there's a principal. I don't think the right manner is to handle it through social media because it's just not the way to go. And I also like to ask for possible solutions. We live in a world where people always have issues. And I think in order to solve those issues, people need to bring solutions to the table in order to solve those issues.
Thank you. What do you see as the role of superintendent as it relates to employee groups, students, the community, and the school board?
I think the superintendent has to be very supportive of employee groups. The teachers are the road the road. That's where the learning takes place. So the superintendent has to be very supportive of employee groups. It's not just about teachers, it's about bus drivers, it's about our child nutrition workers, it's about all of our ancillary services, but the superintendent has to be very supportive. They have to be very knowledgeable of board policy and make sure they follow board policy. In terms of students are why we're here. There is no Ozark City Schools without the students of Ozark. All 2,100 of them. So students are our most important asset in our district. The community is who we are. Our community should rally around our schools. Community is important. When you think of Ozark, you think of Carroll High School. When you think of Ozark, you think of D.A. Smith. You think of Ozark, you think of Lisbon and Nixon. So you have to have a strong community. If you don't have a strong community, you're not going to have a good school system. I think the school board, there has to be a great relationship between the superintendent and the school board, almost like a marriage. You talk about your kids, you talk about finances, You have those hard conversations. And at the end of the day, you do what's best for all students.
Thank you. Based on your knowledge of our system, what do you believe should be the top 2 priorities for our schools and community?
If you would, I would actually give you 4. I think the top one is academic rigor. You know, in researching Ozark City Schools, I think Ozark City Schools is a good school district. I think it's on the verge of being great. I think it's a diamond in the rough. But the academic rigor needs to improve. You know, one of the measures of academic rigor is our ACT scores. The average ACT score in Ozark City School in 2020 is 16.8. 16.8 will not get you a 2-year or 4-year school in Alabama. That's unacceptable. And that does not fall on Carroll High School. It falls on all of us. Carroll High School, EA Smith, Nixon, Lisenby, parents, students, the community. That's unacceptable. So I think we have got to figure out a way to increase the academic rigor K-12 and get parental buy-in, get student buy-in, and get the community buy-in. And there are ways to do that. And one of the ways you can explore is looking at like international baccalaureate or IB. There's a lot of rigor there, and there's also some cost involved. But I think getting outside organizations to try to help with that cost is effective. I think our reading, science, and math efficiency levels are too low. They're all below 40%. That's not acceptable. But it's not just on the student and on the school, it's on the parent, it's on the school board, it's on the community. If you want a great school system, you have a great community with great community support. Next one is going to be teacher turnover. What I've gathered, teacher turnover is an issue in Ozark City schools. So I think we do a better job of recruiting, supporting, and retaining quality teachers. That means we have to have a support system. One way to do that is to build a foundation. In many cities, such as Huntsville, Dothan, Auburn, they have a schools foundation. These are nonprofit organizations, typically backed by city councils, typically backed by county commissioners, 501c3 organizations. In the city of Huntsville, for example, they have a schools foundation which support Huntsville City Schools, Madison County Schools, and Madison City Schools. And their mission is to build capacity with teachers. And one way they do that is they are trying to increase the number of national board certified teachers. I think in the Ozark City system, you have about 175 teachers, only 2 are national board certified teachers. Part of the problem with that is there's a cost involved. The schools foundation in Huntsville picks up about 90% of that cost. The other 10% is on the teacher, and the reason they do that 10% is they want to have skin in the game. It also builds capacity and gives that teacher a $5,000 stipend each year. So I think you have to build capacity with your teachers, so teacher retention. You can't have turnover. You can't have teachers that are great teachers leaving for Dothan or Enterprise. It's not acceptable. People gotta leave, but you have got to invest in your people. You have to support. The third one would be parental involvement in community relations. You've got to have that. And you have a great mayor who's progressive, who's trying to get things moving in the right direction. But if you're going to compete with the surrounding towns, you can compete with Troy, you can compete with Enterprise, you can compete with Dothan, you've got to have politicians back in your school system. And I think that's a key. You also have parents back in your school system. So you have to get parents on board. And that can mean having parent workshops, going out in the community, engaging your parents. You've got to have better community and parent relations. Your school should be your flagship. See, in Ozark, Carroll High School should be your flagship school. I walked through Carroll High School today, all the pieces are there. You have great leadership, you have great kids, you have a facility that's second to none. The pieces are there. But you need leadership from the top at all levels, school board, county commission, city council. You can pull in the right direction. And the last one, I would say, is consistent discipline. I think you have got to have consistent discipline. I'm not saying there's an issue here in Ozark, but you've got to be consistent. You have to be firm and fair. My background as a middle school principal, I was always firm, I was always fair. My kids knew I loved them. Sometimes you gotta show a little tough love, but without consistent discipline, your school system won't be great.
Thank you. In your role as superintendent, how would you work to promote engagement of all students, parents, and community in our system?
In Ozark City Schools, you guys talk about rigor, relevance, relationships. I think in order to do that, you have to focus on that third R, which is relationships. I'm fortunate to be in a position where I have a lot of relationships already in Ozark established. I think you have got to have better relationships between your students, parents, community, and the system. As a superintendent, one thing that I would do is I would have a student advisory group. I would meet with them periodically, possibly quarterly. I want to know exactly what's going on in the schools. I want a good cross-section of students. They'll tell you what's going on, and probably a little bit more. I will do the same thing with the parents. I know when I worked in Enterprise City Schools, we did that with our military parents. So having a good cross-section of parents, include a military parent, include a parent of a child that may have a 504 or an IEP. Be very inclusive. Bring people to the table. Let them know they have a voice. You got an open door. It's not to voice grievances. You need to voice grievances through the chain of command, have an open door, and you listen. Most of our problems can be solved if we listen. I will work with the city council and mayor. I met with the mayor today. I think you guys have a phenomenal mayor, and great things are on the verge of happening in Ozark. Not familiar with the city council, but I think they'll fall in line with everything else. Working with the county commissions, and also working with nonprofit organizations. Like I said before, Schools Foundation, that's something that can be formed in Dale County. It doesn't have to be an Ozark City specific thing. Dale County is so small, you can work with Ozark City, Delaware City, and Dale County to form a Dale County Schools Foundation. But we have to have the backing of the City Council of Daleville, Ozark, and the County Commission.
Thank you. What role do extracurricular activities have in our school system and in our community?
I think most school systems are judged on 3 A's. The academics, the arts, and athletics. Athletics are huge. You can ask any high school principal on Friday nights, if you win football games, discipline goes down. School pride goes up. And everybody feels good about the school. Also, when you win football games, people are coming to the stadium. That means they're stopping at McDonald's or Burger King, and you get some Popeyes, stop at Popeyes, and they're spending money. That means more tax dollars. You have a community feel. If you go to the playoffs, people are going to the games. You have got to focus on that. Ozark's the hometown of rural Jackson, 1970, University of Alabama. So athletics are big here, but it's not just about athletics, it's about all 3. Making sure we have places where all of our students belong. Not everybody's playing football, maybe they're in the band, maybe a chess club. Find a place for all of our students. Students with IEPs, students with 504s. But to answer your question, athletics are huge. I happen to be the assistant principal in Brantley in 2008, 2009, and went to the 3rd round football playoffs. We were 12-1, lost in the 3rd round. Discipline was way down that year. That same year, we won a state championship in baseball. There's so much school pride when your teams are winning. That means having the right coaches, having the right culture, having the right leadership at your school. And it's not just the high school, it's the middle school. Your middle school, TA Smith is the feeder to Carroll High School. Are your coaches at DA working with your coaches at Carroll? That appears to be the case. I think you got on the right track in terms of athletics. But it's not just athletics, it's all 3 A's. It's athletics, arts, and academics.
Thank you. Working with a variety of groups is part of the superintendent's responsibility. Give some examples of how you have encountered oppositions and how you have dealt with resulting situations.
I'll start at Lisby. When I was hired at Lisby, At the time, Elizabeth did not have an assistant principal. I was brought in as an assistant principal with Elizabeth, and there was an assistant principal hired at Mixon. And I was hired to handle discipline and to work with curriculum instruction. I worked with teachers on curriculum instruction, and we formed some formative assessments and some summative assessments. Formative assessments are assessments as you go. For example, we created a bell ring. It's something that the teachers sort of pushed back on and really didn't want to do. But I encouraged them, I worked with them, and using those bell ringers each day, I think helped increase our student achievement. We also created some summative assessments that we administered ourselves. So we have mock tests on certain days, and we bring our kids to the lunchroom, do a mock art test. At the time, we give the algebra reading math test, and I think that helped. There was a lot of pushback there from the teachers, but after a while, they saw the results. They saw that their students engaged more, and at the end of the year, they saw that their test scores went up. Another example would be when I became the principal of Cottonwood Junior High School Enterprise. Became principal over the summer, discussing with my faculty and staff how they do dismissal. And I realized the way they would do dismissal was dangerous. And I said, we're gonna change this. Even before we had our first dismissal, I got a lot of pushback from teachers, got a lot of pushback from parents. It was the right thing to do. It took a while. It took a week. After a week, parents realized this is safe. Not just opening our doors and letting kids go wherever they go. This is safety first. Academics are the most important thing in any district. The safety trumps academics. If you don't have a safe school, academics mean absolutely nothing. Next one would be at Southdale. When I was the principal there, we were the Southdale Warriors. And our high school was, we were the Southdale Seminoles. And our high school was the Dale County Warriors. We wore garnet and gold, like Florida State. And that's not what our high school looked like. So I made a suggestion, we need to line up and be in line with our high school. And I proposed that we become the Southdale Warriors. And there was a little bit of pushback from the community, some teachers, because that's what they were used to. We're gonna get a great feeder pattern in terms of athletics, in terms of academics. We need to be on the same page with Dale County High School. We did that, and I think we bridged the gap between the middle school students and the high school students. I think change is hard. Opposition is needed to grow. You won't always agree on things, but as a leader, you have to make those tough decisions. And hopefully, at the end of the day, you're going to do what's right for kids, and you have a good outcome.
Thank you. If there is a need for a tax increase to assist with the school system funding, how would you present the proposal to the community?
I'm fortunate to be in a district that just went through a tax increase at a referendum about a year ago, and we increased our ad valorem by 12 mills, and it passed overwhelmingly. I think you have to start with trust. If your community doesn't trust you, they're not going to vote on additional funding. You also have to be transparent. If they think that you're not being good stewards of taxpayer money, they're not going to trust you, they're not going to vote for an increase. They also have to figure out what's in it for them. You have about 15,000 residents in Ozark. The vast majority of those property owners do not have students in Ozark City schools. So what's in it for them? Typically, if you raise the property taxes, there's a possibility that your home prices may go up as well. So you have to figure out what's in it for them and clearly articulate that. You have to engage the elected officials, because really raising taxes is a political act. You have to engage the city leaders and get them on board. You have to engage community groups. One of the things we did in Madison is we had community groups that met with the public, and we also had the superintendent go out and articulate the reason and the need for an additional 12 mills. Holding those community meetings is very important. You have to partner with your civic groups and also canvass the city. An example, the average home price in Ozark is roughly $125,000. That's the average. The median home price in Ozark. Most people don't realize that when you look at ad valorem taxes, they're only talking about 10% of the assessed value. So say that the house is worth $125,000. Let's say the house is assessed at $125,000. That's how much the tax assessor says the house is worth. You're only paying taxes on 10% of that. So that's $12,500. If you look at 10 mils of that, that's actually less than $10 a month that you're paying taxes on. Nobody wants to raise your taxes. If you articulate it so clearly that they understand exactly what it is, not you're gonna tax me my $125,000 house, and these 10 mils are gonna cost me $300 extra a month. That's not the case. We're making sure you clearly articulate that. Because you have got to be transparent, and you have got to be good stewards of taxpayer money. Currently, Ozark City Schools spends more money per pupil than Dothan City Schools, in Troy City Schools, in Enterprise City Schools, and Madison City Schools. So if there's a need, we have to make sure that we articulate the need, and we're not just trying to raise taxes to raise taxes.
Thank you. High performance by students and accountability are priorities for our school system. Eliminating the student achievement gap due to part COVID-19 is a must. Please share what approaches and strategies you will pursue to eliminate the gap.
I think anytime students are away from school, there's learning loss. Students have learning loss in the summertime, but with COVID, it's a little bit extreme. I think when you first start with a good K-6, K-5 reading and math curriculum, you have to have a strong curriculum. You have to have high quality core instruction. If you don't have good instruction, it's not going to work. You also have good quality intervention programs. So if those kids don't get it with core instruction, what happens? You provide intervention. For those kids who don't get the intervention, you provide tier 3 services. It's one-on-one, intense services for those kids who don't get it. I think COVID is changing that. I think we have to look at after-school programs. I think we have to look at Saturday school programs. I think we have to look at other avenues in order to reach those kids. I think small group and individual instruction is the way to go. Now, there's a lot of federal money that's available for those things, and that's important. But summer learning opportunity is going to be big. Also, early warning systems. Are we identifying those students who are truant, who are missing school? Are we identifying those kids who have mental health concerns? There are some early warning systems out there that I think Ozark City Schools use Walk for School, for example, for mental health. That's a good program. Gag is another great program. Students who are suffering with mental health issues, if they communicate that through district email, there's alerts sent so the schools are aware of that. But having those early warning systems is important. Also, I think it's key to accelerate those students who are gifted learners. Don't just focus on the kids that are on the road, focus on the gifted learners as well, and focus on those kids who may have an IEP or 504.
What leadership and guidance would you provide to ensure the approaches and strategies are properly implemented, evaluated, and adjusted over time to meet the changing student needs?
I believe any good leader inspects what they expect. I think the goals have to be smart. That means they are specific, they're measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. But the superintendent has to be present. They need to be aware, and they have to make that a priority. If a superintendent pushes a curriculum or program and never checks on that curriculum or program, it's not going to work. They need to be in tune and know what's going on in the building. But I go back to formative assessments and summative assessments. Sometimes what we do is look at ACAP testing, for example. That is a form of summative assessment. It's at the end. You do it after the fact. Whereas if we do these formative assessments as we go, they're like biopsies. So we're checking as we go. We don't want to wait until the end and we have a high stakes test, whether it's ACAP or the ACT, and don't know what's going on. So making sure we have high quality summative assessments and high quality formative assessments to know where our students are. The superintendent's responsible for that.
Thank you. What is your experience with financial management, budget development, fiscal management, etc.? And how would you approach the budget process to ensure success during financially challenging times?
I think my view on financial management goes back to, me being a kid. I grew up pretty much in a single mom home and things were tight. So I believe that you have to spend less than you take in. I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. Obviously, we can't walk around with envelopes in the school system with a bunch of cash in it, but I'm very familiar with the budgeting process as a school administrator and as a district administrator. Every thing that we buy in the school system, there's a 27-digit funding source attached to it. We get money from the state, we get money from the feds, we get local money. We have to account for all that money. We have to pay debt and debt services. There's a 10-year chargeback. We talked about taxes. Making sure our parents and our folks understand that we have to pay 10 bills in order to fund the foundation program. And the foundation program is what provides us funding for our teachers based on ADM. But looking at local revenue, looking at state revenue, look at federal revenue, looking at how we can increase our federal impact aid. That's big. I know currently we don't get a ton of military folks coming here, but those folks that are military connected, there's money connected to federal impact aid. I know Ozark right now seems to be in a pretty good situation in terms of economics. I think they have 2.5 months in reserve, where the state requires 1 month, so that's great. I think that's a testament to Dr. McInturf and the Chief School Financial Officer and the school board of being frugal with taxpayers' money.
Thank you. In support of our diverse community, how will you ensure diversity in all aspects of the school system, including equitable opportunities for our students and hiring of faculty and staff?
I think diversity is very important. I think that Ozark has a very diverse community. About 50% of the school population is African American, 40% white. I think the remainder being other. But I think we need to look at equity. Equity is not always being equal. I think when looking at recruiting and hiring, we need to make sure that we bring our best foot forward and going to institutions of higher learning that may not be true. Looking at Alabama State, looking at Florida A&M, looking at Tuskegee, looking at other HBCUs. 15% of our teacher workforce in Ozark is African American, less than 15%. I think we do a better job of trying to recruit and retain minority teachers. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a high quality teacher in a classroom with a student, regardless of race. But I think the system can do a better job of recruiting minority candidates. But the goal is to recruit, support, and retain high quality teachers that fit what Ozark needs.
Thank you. Describe your experiences with implementation of new technology to include the impact it had on teachers, students, and parents, specifically addressing the COVID-19 pandemic technology implementation. Knowing what you know, what and if will you do different?
Well, I think when COVID-19 hit, it took us all by surprise. I don't think any of us were ready. Ozark was probably better off in the system I'm currently in Madison, being one-to-one. I'm coming from a district that we're not one-to-one. And we had to struggle in order to get Chromebooks. We had to struggle in order to get Wi-Fi hotspots. And once our students went home, we had to figure out how to get devices and technology to our students. And that was tough. We set up distribution centers. We delivered devices to our students' homes. we still realize that even with the devices, we can't force students to log on. Some students still struggle with Wi-Fi. So it was really tough. We also equipped our buses with Wi-Fi. The problem with that is our buses weren't running because our students were at home. So that created other challenges. We use programs like GoGuardian, Bark, and Gaggle to sort of screen our student content. When students are away, there's not a lot of student-teacher interaction, so we don't know how students are doing in terms of their mental health. So those three programs really help with our students in their mental health. We use Schoology and School's PLP as our learning platforms. That helps, but once again, if students aren't logging in, we can try to touch base with parents. We lost a lot of students in the shuffle, probably very similar to what Ozark did. I think looking back at it, we all did the best we could. It was delivering devices, it was delivering meals. It's a once in a century pandemic. It was challenging for us, very challenging.
Thank you. This will end the prepared question portion of the interview. The board has prepared an additional question for you. At the conclusion of your first year as superintendent, how would you gauge your success in the areas of most needed improvement?
Repeat that one time, I'm sorry.
At the conclusion of your first year as superintendent, how would you gauge your success in the areas of most needed improvement?
I think that community relations is probably a big piece. I think we can gauge community relations and parental involvement in surveys. I think you can also look at test data. Test data, it's only a snapshot in time, and sometimes it takes a while for test data to really reveal changes in curriculum, changes in instruction. But I think the community at large will know. I think parent surveys, community surveys, school administrator, other stakeholder surveys, they'll have a good idea of how well I performed as a superintendent after my first year. I think the relationship between the board and the superintendent will be evident if that relationship is working. One of the things that I've given the school board is a 90-day plan. There are things that I like to accomplish in the first 90 days. And most of that requires me listening and touring the schools. I'm very familiar with Ozark City schools, very familiar with most of the administrators, some of the teachers. So I want to be present in the community. I want to be present in the churches. I want to be present in ball games. I want to be seen. I think the superintendent is an ambassador for the school district. And if you have a great superintendent, the world knows about it. If you have an awful superintendent, the world knows about it. But I think being present, being accessible, being transparent, being clear, and being vision focused is very important for a superintendent's first year.
Thank you. This concludes the interview. Mr. West, are there any additional comments that you would like to make to the board?
I do. I want to thank the board again for their this opportunity, for the hospitality. You know, walking around the schools today, you know, I felt at home. You know, and we started off with mixing with Ms. Lowry. That was great. Saw a lot of familiar faces. Walking to the building, it feels great. You guys have a good school system. Jim Collins is the author of Good and Great, and he says good is the enemy of great. I think Ozark City Schools is primed for greatness. Whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, you have a great board, you have a great city council, you have a great city. It's primed. But walking around the schools, you know, I feel it all. Going into D.A. Smith, going into Lisbon, going into Carroll High School. I think Carroll High School is the flagship of this community. It looks great. You have great leadership. There's a place for everybody. And not everybody's going to Auburn. Not everybody's going to Troy or Tuskegee. Somebody may go into cosmetology. You know, someone may go into health services. There's an opportunity for every single kid. And I talked earlier about the ACT score. 16.8 won't do it. We've got to prepare these kids to make sure they're leaving high school, college, and career ready. to make sure that their quality of life is good, that they can give something back to Ozark. And my job, my goal as a father is to make sure my daughter has a better quality of life than me. I had a good life as a kid, but I want her to have a better life and more opportunities. And that's my wish for the parents of Ozark City Schools. I hope that they want a better life, regardless of where they're at right now, they want a better life for their kids than they currently have. I think Ozark is ready for that. I shared with you my 90-day plan. I also share a poem that was written by a teacher, Elizabeth, back in 2010. I won't read that poem, but I'll share that with you. It talks about the third R, talks about relationships. I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect leader. I'm just a humble servant from Birmingham. I've been blessed. My daughter currently attends the best middle school in the state of Alabama. Next year, she's going to probably attend, this doesn't work out, we'll see how that works, the best high school in the state of Alabama. That's true. I live 10 minutes from my parents. I'm probably the happiest I've ever been in my life. But I feel that there's something else. This works, I'm coming here, I'm bringing my daughter here, I'm bringing the 80-pound golden doodle here as dad. But this feels like home to me. But if it's not for me, it's not for me. But I hope you guys get the right person, the right fit to move this place forward. It's prime, it's ready. I worked in Enterprise for 5.5 years. Enterprise is good, but I think they're also complacent. I think the tide's about to turn. Anyway, I have a clear track record in my leadership from the military, being a consultant, being an assistant principal, being a principal, being a district level administrator. I wouldn't change any of that for the world. I'll be humbled to be the next superintendent of Ozark City Schools. Follow Mr. Dr. McIntyre. If it's not in the cards, it's not in the cards. Wish you guys the best of luck, and I pray that Ozark becomes what I know it can be and move from good to great.
Thank you, Mr. West. The board would like to invite everyone to a reception at the top of the auditorium. Thank you all for joining us.